If you saw that there were aliens there, would you tell us?
Yeah.
You would?
I would. Well, I think, look, what do we know? We know now we live in an ever-expanding universe. We know that there are billions of stars and planets literally out there, and the universe is getting bigger. We know from our fancy telescopes that just in the last 2 years, more than 20 planets have been identified outside our solar system that seem to be far enough away from their suns and dense enough that they might be able to support some form of life. So it makes it increasingly less likely that we're alone.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens. And that he didn't find anything.
Well, I'm gonna do it again.
Yeah, why not?
Right? And you know, there's a new name. It's unexplained aerial phenomenon.
Unexplained aerial phenomenon,
Yep,
really?
Yep, UAP. That's the latest nomenclature.
I like the old one. I like UFO. I don't know why.
Well, I think we can use them interchangeably, but I would like us to go into those files and hopefully make as much of that public as possible.
I can't reveal anything.
Oh, really? Because President Clinton said he did go right in, and he did check, and there was nothing.
Well, you know, that's what we're instructed to say.
If suddenly there was a threat to this world from some other species, from another planet, outside in the universe, we'd forget all the little local differences that we have between our countries, and we would find out once and for all that we really are all human beings here on this earth together. Well, I don't suppose we can wait for some alien race to come down and threaten us, but I think that between us we can bring about that realization. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
How many species there might be that we've identified already? What the ships look like, the variety, from the small foo-foo fighters up to allegedly motherships mile wide.
I think, you know, looking at the sorts of interesting reports in these files, the ones from police officers, pilots, military personnel, the ones tracked on radar, you know, there's material there that certainly makes me think twice. It's not all misidentifications of aircraft lights and weather balloons.
Is there any one report that stands out as extraordinary or perhaps most convincing?
One in the new files that I particularly like is a radar sighting where an object travelled 10 nautical miles in 12 seconds, about 3,500 miles an hour. And that's on a military radar.
And they picked up their cameras and started over toward it, filming as they went. And when they got in fairly close to it, it lifted up, put the gear back in the wheel wells, tipped up, and took off at a great rate of speed. And so they came into my office and told me what had happened, and I sent them over to develop the film, and then had to go through all the proper regulations of reporting this, and we wound up having to send the film forward to Washington in the base jet airplane, and I don't know whether anyone's ever seen it since.
I have frequently been asked why a person of my background, a former chief of the defense staff, a former chairman of the NATO military committee, why I think there is a cover-up, or what the reasons may be for governments wishing to cover up the facts about UFOs. What I'd like to say is that there is a serious possibility that we are being visited and have been visited for many years by people from outer space, from other civilizations. That it behoves us, in case some of these people in the future or now should turn hostile, to find out who they are, where they come from, and what they want.
What I saw were lights. I saw three different things. I saw a glowing red eye-like ball that was dripping like molten metal that came toward us, that moved, it came into the forest, moved through the trees, missing the trees, obviously under control. The item moved back into the field and exploded and was gone. There were three objects to the north in the sky that had multicolored lights that moved in synchronization as though they were doing a grid search. We watched them for quite a while, and we saw two objects to the south. They were white, bright lights. We couldn't discern a shape. There was a shape, but I couldn't tell what it was. One came overhead at high speed, very high speed, 2,000 or 3,000 feet up, and sent down a laser-like beam at our feet. Just click, it was on. I stood there in awe, very concerned. Is it a weapon? Is it a warning? Is it communication? And as suddenly as it appeared, it disappeared.
The United Nations is getting ready for a contact with aliens from outer space. This is Moslin Othman. She's out of Malaysia. She will be planet Earth's first interstellar diplomat.
If aliens invaded, who would step up to lead us in that fight, and could we even win? That's just one of the questions the Discovery Channel's new series, Curiosity, looks at. Joining me now is physics professor Michio Kaku, who is a consultant for the series. Professor, welcome. The biggest question before we get any invasion is, do aliens even exist, and how would we know?
Well, the Kepler satellite currently orbiting in outer space has identified about 50 planets that seem very much Earth-like. In fact, every week we discover another Jupiter-sized planet in outer space. Now, to be sure, most of them probably have no more than microbial life, just germs. But a few of them may have intelligent life, perhaps even more advanced than what we have on Earth.
Just finishing up, this is the Vatican now, a 5-day conference on aliens. Father Jonathan Morris, Fox News contributor, back with us. Father, good morning to you.
What a great movie that was.
It was a wonderful movie. Drew Barrymore, and off she went. Did the Vatican find alien life?
You know what? As sensationalistic as that question sounds, it's really not that far off from what we've seen in the news over these last days. The pictures of what might have been Pope Benedict standing on the roof of the Sistine Chapel looking for UFOs. That's the type of images that this news conjures up. What is exceptional is that the Vatican was taking very seriously what science might tell us about the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligent life forms.
How would it change the Church's teaching then? Well, if you consider for a moment, if you determine that there is extraterrestrial life there.
Well, one thing would be fascinating would be not only extraterrestrial life, but if it were extraterrestrial intelligent life forms. That would definitely make us go back and say, maybe our understanding of perennial truths needs to be updated. Now, the way we look at it is this. It's not about whether or not God was the creator, but rather how he created. It's not a question of whether original sin, this Adam and Eve story, is true or not, but our understanding of how that played out. So it's growing in our understanding of perennial truths.
I think that's an interesting explanation there. And I think also if it were determined, Father, that would be an earthquake, would it not?
It would be. It would be, and especially if the Vatican were involved in accepting that. I think we have to make sure that science is not in some way ideologically driven. We have to make sure that faith and religion is not ideologically driven. faith and reason, they go together.
Well, you
We have to
represent the
respect.
church very well in this segment here. Now, I know they've had the conference.
Related to the announced release of many of his controversial intelligence leaks, he has now stated that there will be UFO-related materials. Recently, WikiLeaks revealed alleged compromised Department of Defense cable communications indicating that U.S. armed forces may be in the midst of a secret war with UFOs. According to the sources that were revealed, there was an all-out alert issued by Air Force Space Command after the emergence of a large flotilla of airborne unidentified objects from the floor of the southern seas of the Antarctic. This armada of unknown objects headed toward Guadalajara, Mexico. It is said that Julian Assange has been falsely accused of sexual assault charges by authorities in Sweden, which resulted in his arrest in Great Britain. That one of his accusers, Anradine, has fled and is presently in hiding among the Palestinians, is a strong indication that the charges, according to those familiar with government tactics, is a ploy to silence Assange's evidence. U.S. warplanes are said to have been deployed to meet a massive fleet of UFOs on the 10th of June 2004, and all radar systems intensified on the inbound targets. The massive fleet supposedly then resubmerged into the Antarctic oceans. Recently, another massive emergence of the unknown objects headed toward the southern tip of South America and flew over Chile. Experts say that the immediate threat posed by these huge displays is the dangerous waves they generate as they surface, which is capable of sinking oceanic vessels. In the most recent appearance of the UFO armada from the Antarctic Southern Ocean, one cruise ship was nearly capsized with 160 aboard, while another vessel was overturned with a crew of 60 with only 20 rescued survivors. This story was originally released by the European Times Online, which had reported that the Russian president was receiving intelligence briefings indicating that the US was involved in secret military confrontations with massive UFO formations originating from underwater bases in and around the Antarctic oceans. These events corroborate a number of other incidents over the past recent years. In 1991, a wave of UFO sightings swept over Mexico City during the widely awaited eclipse. The luminous objects were recorded by many handheld video cameras owned by citizens and offered to TV news crews. In October 13, 2010, the dramatic appearance of UFO activity over New York City caused the Air Force to shut down air traffic over the city for 24 hours. Thousands of witnesses stood spellbound as they watched UFOs in the skies over the city. Commonly known as unidentified submerged objects, USOs, there have been numerous reports over the last 4 decades of startling appearances of underwater objects suddenly emerging and harassing ships and aircraft. The late Ivan T. Sanderson, a well-known TV personality on animal behavior as well as a former intelligence officer during World War II, published more than one book on the subject, considerably ahead of his time. Friends close to him allege that he never gave up his research on USOs, and may even have been viewed as a dangerous nuisance by his former espionage employers. Sanderson contracted a rare cancer that ended his life quickly, like so many others who have been deemed inconvenient to sensitive government matters. A massive sighting of USOs terrified several people on the California coast. Police received phone calls from frightened citizens telling them of bright objects emerging from the Pacific and flying into the night sky at rapid speed.